Good evening. You're looking live at the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Alongside me tonight from Central Florida is Professor Pixel, and we are going to discuss what makes or breaks supposedly what we call horror films today in 2022. And we're going to be using the film Barbarian, recently out here during the Halloween season, to accomplish that. I want to start off here, Pixel, by saying we're just doing a quick review on this. Normally, you and I will dive deep and hard and long into something like this, especially if it's juicy, meaty, moist, and wet. But the whole thing about this movie that I kept hearing about with Barbarian was, hey, you got to see it. It's a clever one. It's interesting. The trailer looks decent. I will say some of the cinematography in here is good, and there's one or two really great scenes that still stick with me as far as the way it's shot. When it comes right down to it, though, as much as I'm a huge Halloween type film fan and love the franchise and all that, I certainly did not mind Halloween Ends, despised Halloween Kills. That movie made me mad. That was a year ago. This has now supplanted that because this is by far one of the worst films I've seen in years. It has basically zero merit to it. We could argue the very obvious anti-male approach it takes, which we're going to table that and put it off the side. And it got me to want to have a conversation with you about how somebody from my generation, an 80s kid, and somebody from your generation, younger, perceives what a horror film should be. So, Barbarian, for those getting ready to come in the chat here, is a film that is getting a lot of talk about its shock ending, its twist, and this and that. And all I gotta say, this movie is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. And a movie can be dumb and still be good. But let's just talk about the whole idea of a horror movie, Pixel. Let me ask you this. Is a horror movie supposed to be scary? My answer is yes. What's yours?
I mean, yeah, it's supposed to be scary. It's supposed to be disturbing. It is supposed to keep you on the edge of your seat, and it's supposed to keep you, at least to some degree, terrified.
And I think there's different ways that you can accomplish this. You and I had recorded recently offline a soon to be dropped review of a movie from the early 70s called The Blood Spider Bride, which deals with lesbian vampires and the patriarchy versus the matriarchy, whatever you want to call it. But they do it in such a way that the message doesn't overtake the way the story is being told. And this is where I think Barbarian fails and just falls completely flat, because I think we're treated to an actually decent first act, where we don't quite know where the movie's going, or it seems so obvious we go, no, it's not going to do that. And it shifts, which some people may love, some people may hate. But again, I look at it and go, this guy has no idea what the fuck he's doing, because again, when we talk about stories, if there's not a character you like or can root for whatever reason, why the hell are you going to be invested in it? Was there a character in here that you thought that was done well in terms of liking or being interested in it?
I mean, from the first act, we do have Mr. Skarsgård himself. He,
One of
he
those scars guards.
Yes, that's right, Bill Skarsgård, and he was great. And I actually did. I liked the main female protagonist.
Tell me why.
Why?
It's kind of cute in an upscale sort of way.
I mean, yes, she is kind of cute, but I also think that as she is going through this movie, she has to quickly uh, learn how to not learn how to handle the situation that is totally and utterly batshit. Uh, it's it's absolutely crazy, and I think that I liked her. I did.
I I was watching this with a room full of women, and we were not under the influence of anything, so we're pretty sober watching it. And all the women did the exact same thing at the exact same time. They all went, "Oh hell no! There's no way in hell I'd be staying there with this guy, even though he's hot, right? Depends on his
Yeah.
hotness level. You're going to do it, and we get it, okay? So that's it's a bit of a stretch. The scene though that I think is pretty cool, and what we get to see towards the end of the first act, this is definitely a high point. I think is we see her driving up, and we suspect it's a bad area because it's Detroit. My how the mighty have fallen, and so she gets out. She's debating about going back and forth, and there's a shot. I think it's from pans from right to left, and with all this back and forth, Skarsgård plays basically a guy that's he does the right things. He's a nice guy, which women generally hate and all that too. But of course, once you pop that bottle of wine, women just start drinking and start running their mouths about stuff. So you go, okay, he's doing a nice guy approach of maybe trying to get somewhere. But then an interesting thing happens. Yeah, she goes to sleep in a room. They kind of almost do this in a believable way, and he's on the couch. Her door opens somehow, and he's having bad dreams on the couch, and you're still not sold. So you're like, okay, what's going on here? And the shot when it's the next morning, when she walks out of the house and things are breaking down, we get that same panning of the neighborhood from right to left and around, and we realize, holy shit, this is a war zone. It is like Pine Hills, where we're broadcasting from too, from the Pine Hills Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. But I thought that was a tremendous shot, and there's some great cinematography in here. But right now, we're left to be saying what's going on. And let's be honest. Once we got the twist where they fawned the door and went down into the bottom, once we got a picture of Mama, I laughed and went, oh my God. And the women in the room with me were like, there's no way anyone would ever go back. They would ever be involved in this house. They'd go to the job interview and stay. It's totally unbelievable, especially from a female perspective. And I have to say that it's so incredulous that even if you check your brain at the door with that, what the fuck is going on here? And then of course the time shifts, which wasn't a bad thing because it took my mind off of how bad it was and what was going on. But let me pause here and allow you to fill in some gaps.
I will just say that I watched this movie and with women too, and they liked it as well. But it's obviously supposed to be with how this is setting up at the beginning. Skarsgård is supposed to look like, okay, he's behind something. He's got something to do with it. It's all these, and actually reading a bit about it, the director wanted it to be that these are all a bunch of red flags that you should run away from, but she doesn't run away. She goes ahead and pushes through. It's her place, so she's going ahead and she takes the room. And once they find that room downstairs and the path leading to it, I honestly did expect that it was going to be Skarsgård pushing him into that one room that with the camera.
Yeah, or sex torture, some Saw-ish kind of thing. Yeah.
That's what you're expecting. But the room goes deeper. And with that revelation, it's down this dark tunnel. It's so eerie just being down there.
Yeah.
And at that point, we still don't know what's happening. And when we get a glimpse of Mama, she bashes poor Skarsgård's head in. He was the nice guy. It's not his fault that his face is weird. He is
There's
good.
a great line that when she's got the flashlight on because they're in the dark and he's trying to be stuck and he goes, something bit me. That was pretty cool. And then it went downhill because there's no way you have a female living underground like that it looks bigger than a predator from the recent Prey movie, which really wasn't that good either, doing what she's doing or whatever. It's like, really? Are you trying to go into Descent territory, which, by the way, is a fantastic female movie? I just went, okay, what are you going to do with it? So we see that her going through her job interview, and she tells the white lady, where she's at. She's like, oh, you can't stay there. And, we're in an age today where most people wouldn't talk like that. But I thought, okay, how is this going to be involved in? Is it going to be like some sort of ring where the company's involved and it's anti-corporate or whatever? I'm going, okay, there's some possibilities with what they could do here because who's going to go to this shithole? Nobody. So it's a great place to double book people and do weird things to them. So I'm like, okay, maybe they're hiding the big thing to us. And then, of course, we get to see Justin Long, who a lot of people like. He's involved in really bad movies like Tusk, which is insulting. Even though that had Rutger Hauer in it, I believe. Oh my God, I'm shaking my head right now thinking of it. And he plays this guy that allegedly sexually assaulted somebody. It's not confirmed whether he did or he didn't, but he pretty much admits to his boy that he did. So we get like 20, 30 minutes of him basically being, a 120-pound dude that you just want to slap because he's a dumb fuck. And like, okay, what am I doing with this movie? What am I watching? What's going on? Skarsgård's gone. What's happening to her? it's really insulting with what they do here, because not only is the setup of what's going on unbelievable in terms of what a woman would do, no matter what her age is. I think serviceable was the term used here in chat. I think that's appropriate, because if she were much worse or angry, it would have turned everybody off. So the most horrific thing in here, really, and the creepiest scene, and then I'll ask you what you think about it here, is we get a time shift, and immediately we see the house with a really nice lawn, and there's this neat transition. And I could tell it was back in the early 80s because they're playing Asia. I think it was Heat of the Moment, as the guy's coming out of his house and he's buying these baby supplies and the video. And we're like, what? And we're like, oh, this is going to be the bad dude. And we see him stalking and wearing his uniform to go to this lady's house that he was stalking. This beautiful, of course, single mom, which whatever. Um, and then all the women said the exact same thing. And I missed this, Pixel. I missed this, damn it, because as a guy, unless I'm focused on it, I am not detail oriented. He's wearing a Michael Myers type uniform, pretending to be like an electrician or a plumber, I think it is. And the name, I think, said Carlos on it, and his name's whatever. So he's standing there in front of his neighbor, who I thought had a nice little line talking about how the neighborhood's going down the hill and moving. That's your classic white flight, as they would say, the middle class leaving, and that's what Detroit was happening to in the 80s. So I thought that was kind of a nice exchange. But he's standing there in that outfit with the name Carlos on it, rather than whatever. And the guy uses his real name in conversation. I'm like, fuck, I feel stupid for missing that, right? And then we find out that this is just, his way of doing it. But the guy stalking and just watching, that was well done.
Yeah. We basically get to learn that this guy has been for years and years, he's been taking women, sleeping with them, breeding them, and then sleeping with those with the children. There's a character in Game of Thrones called Craster. He did very much the same, except he didn't lock them away. But with that, he basically bred himself this monster woman who is very simple-minded, who basically becomes brainwashed into being a mama. And with that, that's when it all becomes about escaping. We know how far we go. Verity Princess saying the issue with the idea is how many children are there. That's a detail that is not addressed, I'll admit, but I didn't feel the need for it at that point. With how it was going, I was
as many as
he
could feed.
Yeah, as many as he could feed. And, he probably didn't want any little boys. Can't make use of those.
Yeah, it's striking because the urban decay element to this movie, I thought, was pretty powerful. A lot of movies that don't really kind of get into that, and of course that's not the source of the horror in the movie. The horror, of course, is supposed to be the father figure, the white male figure. And again, trying not to really dive too deep in that and talk about how intentional the director made that. Just talk about how bad this movie's on its own without even diving into the PC messaging in it. So we see that Skarsgård was the obvious decoy. Same thing with the snuff room. We see this woman whose makeup was done really well, but by then you're going, okay, the threat of what could happen and the way it's unfolding on these possibilities, once they evaporate, when we see Justin Long's character going through, we don't like him. He's not a good dude. He's not somebody to root for. He's not having what a lot of people I saw online were describing as a moral crisis. Like, maybe if I do something, maybe I'm a good guy, and if I just did a bad thing, or I don't know, maybe I can redeem myself or whatever. Because the whole shit show this movie is that you get, you get a black homeless guy that didn't look homeless at all. He was way too clean looking and coherent in terms of his verbiage. Basically saying, yeah, she comes out at night and hunts, and you can't go back at her, which of course she does, which is really batshit stupid. And he had mentioned that he lives over in a water tower, so we know we're going to end up there. So when they manage to escape, Justin Long and her, there's a scene in here that was kind of went really stupid. Where
the worst part of this movie for me was when she fell down the water tower and the mother leapt down, took her into her arms and twisted, because it just looked ridiculous. But I still like Justin Long's character is shitty. He's an absolutely shitty character. And so when you say anti-male, it's anti this guy, this one guy. All the other guys were fine
Who's the source
except
of the
the
evil?
villain. Men were not the source of the evil.
Who's the source
Justin
of the evil?
Long was his own source of evil.
Okay, the father from the 80s.
Okay, that's two.
Okay.
The
And
homeless black guy
Skarsgård
was good. He was trying to help.
Skarsgård, nice guy. Oh, can't have that. Boom, done. Homeless
I
guy
mean,
wants to be the hero, wiped out. Just saying.
I mean, if you're saying because men die, it's anti-male. There are plenty of movies that do the same
Just
thing.
talking about what the director's intentional approach was to the film that he's talked about and everything else. So it's very obvious just by watching it rather than researching or reading it. You know, the thing that happens here is they make Justin Long's character act like a girl. So they're down in the catacomb area, and it's super dark. And for catacombs, you know, it was shot well. We see that a few weeks have passed, and he falls into this trap, and she's in there, and he's got a flashlight or whatever, and she's like, shh, and she tells him what to do. And as soon as the milk bottle got lowered down on a rope, I lost it. I was hysterical. My dogs woke up, and they started barking because they thought I was hurt or somebody was breaking into our house. It was so ridiculous. I thought, this is weird and strange, and I get that that's what they're trying to do, but again, it's supposed to be a horror movie, not a comedy. It's not a trolling movie like *Malignant* was. So he refuses to drink the milk out of the bottle, so he ends up in the other room where he won't breastfeed. And, this is supposed to, I guess, be shocking, outrageous, you know, whatever. It's like, no, this is just dumb, because the only video that's playing in the background is the one that the guy bought. We saw him buy it from the store and all that too. So that's the only way that this female, who's talked about as the monster, really isn't. She just wants to be a mommy, and she just wants to have a baby, but she can't do that because everyone keeps leaving. It's so fucking ludicrous. It's an absolute joke. And then to your point here at the water tower, Just Long, true to character, you know, maybe he's playing against type from what we think of him. I'm not saying he did a bad job at it, because at this point you're going, who am I going to root for? Because when they're down underneath, he accidentally shoots her. And so she's got like this gut wound, which when she fell down, I thought it was like between her eyes, like on her forehead. That's what I thought I saw. But she gets up, she's holding, I think, her right side. So somehow she's able to, with a bullet wound, even though it was small caliber, that may be possible, leave. They go to the bums hideout, the water tower. And then, of course, it's all set up just like out of Deep Blue Sea or any other movie like that, where you know that the creature's coming from the back to whack them. Justin Long, of course, won't help her over the fence. They climb up the water tower, and he's having this crisis or like that, and he throws her off a water tower. And I thought, oh, is she going to get gored the way she's falling down on the fence there that she couldn't climb? No, she lands on the concrete road, right? And so then he does it with miraculous timing, where the creature then dives down in a slow motion thing. And I'm going, he must have been watching Die Hard too many times and had that Christmas
No,
thing
you're
at
missing
Nakatomi
it.
Plaza, you know, because I'm like, what the fuck? This
You're
is
missing
so bad.
you're missing the point. He wasn't planning on her being rescued. He was killing that girl.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and so the mother leaps down and is going to get her. Justin Long had no intention of letting of wanting either of them to live. He was just hoping that she would leap down, die along with her. And because
did you see the way they were framed when he went down there? The creature somehow ended up being underneath her, to your point, like it was
twisted,
like a mom would do. And then what happens? Because there's two, and then what happens? So what's the postscript when he gets down there?
I mean, he gets his just desserts. I mean, the monster, even though it's taken a beating, it has a little bit left in it to go ahead and finish him off. And that's when the woman takes the gun and pretty much puts this horrible creature out of her misery.
Then what happens?
Then she walks home. She walks away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After being shot. At least she didn't twist her ankle. I mean,
Rob, Didn't we review a movie called Malignant this past year?
We did.
And I just gotta ask, weren't you in the camp that it was actually an enjoyable horror movie?
Malignant to me was a troll movie. I thought it was very obvious from the beginning, the way it was shot and all that. It was not meant to be serious horror. It's a one-trick pony that once you watch it and you understand what's going on, and then if you go back and watch it, you go, "Oh, I get what the fuck's going on." It's lighthearted. It's campy. It's not scary. It's not a thriller like, say, The Blood Splattered Bride that we reviewed, that will be dropping here soon, where that's kind of like a gothic romance in a way. I wouldn't call it a slasher film. It's very pro-woman, lesbian angle type progressive film from the early 70s. This one here, I go, well, there's nothing progressive about it. Simply saying men suck or whatever you're trying to say isn't progressive. I mean, if there's a way to make it seem like they're the bad guy in a movie, a lot of these movies have failed. When you diminish everybody around it, that doesn't uplift who your main character is supposed to be, like her. And again, in chat, serviceable is a good way to describe her. So to me, I'm looking at the director and going, I'm so pissed that people like this are able to print money, and probably get a sequel and talk about how great they are and all the paid for hype about how tremendous it is and how it's one of the best horror movies in 20 years. And look, there's a lot of horror movies, and they might be a good horror movie. That doesn't mean they're a good movie overall when you rank them against really hardcore great films. And we don't understand that going into it. So it's very hard to take a movie like Upgrade, which isn't a slasher at all, and have it have merit, or like The Invisible Man, which I thought was done well, whether you agree with its messaging or not. That's modernized and done well, but the story takes place before the message, and you have to put it in there. It's not like Lord of the Rings, where Lord of the Rings doesn't adhere to the subject matter or treat it with any respect at all, and they intentionally come out and said, well, you don't like what we're trying to do using Lord of the Rings as a vehicle, then you're stupid, and oh, by the way, we won't let you publish reviews. This is the same kind of insulting behavior from this director, talking about, yeah, I thought, well, I'll try to do this and then I'll try to do that or whatever. And I thought, I've worked in a lot of different places over my careers, and to have that just lack of professionalism, I guess, as it were, in treating what you're trying to do as something serious. I guess that's what passes for modern acceptable horror today, because I wanted to ask you, being the younger guy out of this duo, I just seems to me, and we've talked about this before, that the standards for movies have been so low, especially in the past 20 years with all the Marvel and DC stuff, that when it comes to horror movies, I'm left thinking, what do young people find scary today?
I mean, this wasn't a purely terrifying, scary movie. No, but I think I disagree with everybody around me. It was very enjoyable. I mean, you can feel that way about Malignant. There are definitely elements of that in here, though, and it's far more enjoyable. Justin Long's character, if you want to look at it as a commentary of these false nice guys who do these horrible things around, fine. It's still not as horrible, say, as another movie, a slasher movie this year, Bodies, 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 which is also a commentary on youth, meanwhile glorifying their behavior. And it's just truly that is a god-awful film, but this I don't feel that way. Just you can say it's anti-men, but the only man that I feel it's anti, only men, I suppose, is the horrible rapist from the 70s, and well, Justin Long, who is also a rapist. But
what about the cops?
Huh?
And the cops?
Well, the cops were dismissive because what she was saying was ridiculous. She didn't have any of the information to go ahead and get inside that house, so they really didn't have any rights to go ahead in there. But I really enjoyed this movie. I'm
Really?
surprised. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm glad that you did, for your happiness. I just,
Yeah.
Can you tell me one thing that's enjoyable specifically?
I enjoyed the twists that we took. Like when you brought up the 70s moment, and when we had a flashback, this movie had 3 different times when it felt like it was already, like it was to a shocking end, but it continued. It went on. After Skarsgård gets his head bashed in and it goes to black, I was like, wait a minute, is that it? Because it felt far too short. And that's when it takes its sudden turn, and it ties the stories together in this knotted film.
Well, you're the young 20-something in here, so I know we have some different sensibilities when it comes to it. And Ed Brewer's putting me on the hot spot because I was just thinking about this while we were talking about this film. It's like, what's been a really good horror film over the past couple of years that's somewhat fairly modern? And I don't even know if I would call The Invisible Man horror. To me, that's more of a thriller. That's got that one chick from that one show where women are kept, whatever. I forget what the name of it is, whatever. Or the guy makes the invisible suit and all
Handmaid's
that.
Tale.
Yeah, that blonde that's in it. I think she's the lead in it. That was shot well. That's a micro budget type film. Upgrade's not a horror film, but that's tremendous. I know we've done some Nick Cage movies, and most of them are crap. They're entertaining. They're not scary. You know, Ed, I think you've been in chat for a lot of what we've done, and Mandy with Nick Cage. I don't know if that's a horror film, but that's tremendous. That's like a micro budget kind of movie, but it's just everything we're talking about now. It's gonzo, it's over the top, it's got some good acting, it's some fantastic scenes. Loved Mandy a lot. I think RDV and I reviewed that. I don't know if you were with us with that Pixel, but I'm really trying to think what's been a good horror film. You and I reviewed some older ones. We're getting ready to go live here in a little bit for Curse of Frankenstein from Hammer Horror Films, 1957, I believe. To me, that's more of a
I
gothic
got
thriller,
one.
but still, give it to me because
Ed,
it's not Barbarian.
Ed, go watch X. X is fantastic.
X is done well by Ty West. I've mentioned this before, and we'll get ready to close with a quick talk about that. Ty West has done The Sacrament. He's done another one whose name escapes me, about a girl that's in the 80s wanting to do some babysitting, and it's very slow until you get to the very end. He follows a line of what a lot of people will do is make a small budget movie where they have complete control over it. You and I have even Pixel talked about how studios interfere a lot and change things up. So to me, the Blumhouse model, A24 or however you want to call it, what a lot of times they'll do is they'll let an actor or somebody who's got an idea come up with something, and if they develop it, say, you know what, here's your budget, you guys make it, you got to come in on budget, and we'll let it go. And so I think while there's definitely been some misses with doing that, the fact that you get somebody's artistic vision is what I think is important, because there's a lot of younger people trying to come up and do stuff. Jordan Poole, absolutely not scary at all. They're yawn
Yep.
fest snoozers. But Ty West with X, that's done well, and that has a gonzo ending to it. The sequel, Pearl, is like Malignant. It's a character movie. It's not scary at all. It's a Technicolor, very gorgeous kind of film, but it deals with women and
I need to see
coming
it.
of age sexually. I just watched Pearl a few nights ago too, but I liked X from earlier in the year. That was a solid film. I don't believe we covered it, but I think we mentioned it. Any
Yeah,
thoughts
no,
from you about recent horror besides that?
I think if you want something that goes ahead along a classic vein, X is definitely the way to go. This I don't understand. I don't understand disliking it. I had a good time with it. I was thoroughly creeped through it, and I don't know. But other than that, for modern horror, I think that as long as we keep away from the crappy Hereditary type films, that horror can rise again.
No, I think we're in a down cycle, and I'll close with these two suggestions, and then we'll call it a night here. Two movies I was thinking of, based off what you were talking about, came to mind as far as awesome horror movies, because of the way they do it. It's kind of funny because I thought, 1984, Asia, um, Lionel Richie without the Commodores dancing on the ceiling. Lionel Richie is scarier in this movie, by the way. I thought to myself, okay, what were some really good movies? And while there's some great comments in the chat about what are some good movies, I got to close with these two here. From 2009, 10-ish time frame, the American one I think is okay, but I think it's Swedish is the best. That's the version to watch, and it's called Let the Right One In. That is a vampire movie dealing with kids. Really, really good. But in terms of a modern horror movie, I think it's probably the best one in the past 10 years on my short list also, seriously, is It Follows. I mean, outside of that, it's a very, very short list too. Very high on It Follows and Let the Right One In. Those immediately jump to the top list for me when it comes to past 20 years. Some really, really great ones too. Asian Horror, The Wailing. Yeah, the ghosting with Asians and the jump scares is a thing that I'm not crazy about. I know there's more to it than that, but I remember like when Audition, everybody's like, "Oh my god, you guys see Audition? It's shocking. It's unlike anything you've ever seen before." And like, you know, Let the Right One In. Yeah, the European version is tremendous. All right, Pixel. Any other final comments?
No, I think we're good to go.
All right, guys, we're getting ready to hop on over for Curse of Frankenstein, Hammer Horror Films here in just a minute. We'll be there. Thanks, guys, for showing up. Love the conversation and chat there, too. Always gives us some great ideas for it, too. So we're going to transition away from horror, going on our holiday season selections here on the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, alongside me tonight with Professor Pixel. Thanks for watching, listening. As always, guys and gals, stay extreme.